Thank you guys all for joining us on the KECO live call. This is an 8-week series. This is week five of 8. We're not sure if we're going to continue, but the feedback we've been getting has been really awesome. We had some real estate agents come in last call and they were pretty eye-opening for them. But really, the reason why we created this call is we feel like there is a gap in the market from investors to the lending side. And what our job here on this call is to bridge that gap and answer questions and provide you the things you need to scale and keep growing as you invest in your real estate portfolio. All of us here work with KECO Capital, and we're going to go over certain segments. So last week, we talked about the private lending process, how to be ready, right? What docs you need and how to make sure that you're set up to go so that way we can reach your timelines and get things done in the manner which we need to go ahead and close. So we're going to go over that process and the next steps. John is going to help us with that. And if you have questions, please let us know. Kane is going to come in here and talk about pooling comps. Guys, as much as we do these loans, comps is always something that comes up. We're going through it right now, and I think we'll give you guys some insights on what we're going to be doing. I'm going to save that for Kane, and then we're actually going to go over a company that helps us with the comps, and we're going to walk through that with you folks as well. So stay with us. Let us know if you got questions, but we are going to start this thing off. I'm going to turn it over to Brother John out there in Las Vegas. Johnny, go ahead, brother. Let's get this going for our people.
Yes, thank you, Keely. Happy Friday, everyone. We're already at the end of May. And just a quick refresh, on our very first call at the beginning of this month, we did a high-level overview of the private lending process. And so as a quick refresher, every single deal moves through these stages: the loan request, doc submission, appraisals and valuations. Then it gets submitted to underwriting, full file. Clear to close comes next after all conditions are met, and then funding and closing. If you guys want to see the replay, all these videos are up on our YouTube channel. Also, the documents, all the templates are shared as well. We have a Google Drive link, which Lockheed will drop in the chat as well, so that you guys have the templates available to submit anytime you guys have deals with us. So moving a deal from initial loan request to the closing table requires a team effort. And one of the main variables is document organization, and that dictates how fast or slow the deal moves. So if we want speed, we have to give underwriting straightforward numbers right out of the gate. Even when you guys submit deals to us, the rehab construction budget has to be tight. We need a clear purchase price or clear current value if you're refinancing the property, and accurate ARVs, which stands for after repair values, or after construction values, which is what's used for new construction projects. And when you get us the exact documents we ask for in the time frame that we ask for them, we can minimize delays. So one of the first steps, last week, we talked about the main documents that we need to kick off a deal. And one of the first main steps after we review the deal, valuations look good, is ordering the appraisal. And we can't order an appraisal to verify the property value until we have the initial files. Those files are your completed loan application, your track record, scope of work, rehab construction overview form, and if it's a new construction project or if you're adding square footage, a copy of the plans as well. If you hold back on any one of these forms, we can't order the appraisal. So obviously that'll create delays, and then the closing date slips a little bit. So the next slide here, common post-submission conditions that we see. One of the number one issues, and we're going to get into it, it's the main topic of the call today, is lower than expected valuations. So our team does the best we can to look at our own comps before we even submit the deal to underwriting. So we run our numbers really conservatively, not only to protect you guys as investors, but also to present the file as clean as possible to underwriting and to minimize delays. We don't want the appraisal to come back lower than expected. So action item with this is just make sure to be realistic and data driven with your comps. Again, before we even submit everything to underwriting, if you're unsure about any of the comps or the valuation of the property, you guys can come with us. We're more than willing to work with you guys to find out what the most accurate as-is value and the most accurate after repair value is going to be for your project. One of the second most common conditions we see is outdated entity docs and missing signatures, which we touched on last week. So we see underwriting kick back quite a few files for either outdated entity docs, like expired certificates of good standing or unupdated operating agreements. And they're also rejecting forms for missing dates with missing signatures. Again, the main program website we use is DocuSign. Stylus is hard to verify, so underwriting will kick back any stylus paperwork. A wet signature always works great as well if that's what you prefer. And number three, the third most common post-submission condition we see is credit pull freeze. So we have a lot of investors who freeze their credit. And as a reminder, we do typically perform a hard pull from all three credit bureaus. So from TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. Just make sure your file is unfrozen prior to the underwriting team pulling credit. Because again, that's another delay. If the underwriting team pulls credit, your file's frozen, your file gets sent to the back, and we have to face potential delays as well. As another tip to provide you guys with the maximum leverage and the best interest rates, we recommend aiming for at least a 680 or above credit score. And again, if you have anything on your credit history, a background check issue, any history of violent crime or recent mortgage rates, don't try to hide it from us. We want to make sure your guys' deal works, and we want to present a most solid and upfront file to underwriting as possible. So we'll work with you guys. Don't hide anything. Just be upfront with us. Reach out to us directly before you submit the file, and then we can guide you through specific underwriting guidelines and structure the deal to pass review. So before we move on to the main portion of our call, I want to open up the room for any questions about the process or anything else, or if Kaylee or Kane, if you guys want to add anything else.
Well, I missed the last call last week, right? But it is a lot I get, right? So even if you guys don't
Yep.
think of anything now, shoot it to us on Instagram.
I'll drop a link in the chat in just a moment where you can add their contact to John, Kelly, and Kane's, and you can reach out to them directly too if you have questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add, Lakia did drop that document on there. Fam, that document on there is really awesome. You just click what it is that you're wanting to know more about, and it opens a link. Check that out. Let us know. But yeah, getting things together up front is really important. That way we can streamline this and get you guys rolling.
Yep.
If we don't have any questions, I think we're good to go though. Or go ahead, Kane.
Nice. So pulling comps, this is probably going to be the most important, one of the most important. It's the first thing you do, definitely, is getting the value, right? So no matter where you're at in your real estate career, whether you're wholesaling, flipping, doing buy and holds, even as an agent and you're listing or putting in offers, the value is going to be the main thing that kind of determines the whole deal. So the question is, like, how do you get that value, right? And there's a lot of people who have opinions on how to do it, but at the end of the day, it's mostly appraisers, right? And then you also have the lender. So the appraisers give a value. We're going to go over the rule of thumb that they typically use. And then at the end of the day, it really comes down to who's putting out the money for the deal, right? Which is the lender. So every lender does an internal eval, right? Like an internal evaluation just to make sure that the appraisal is giving a true value. There are appraisers, right, who are on do not use lists with a lot of lenders. So that's why most lenders will use an AMC who kind of check the background and how many flags an appraiser has. That's also a big reason why we don't use borrower preferred appraisers, because you can have appraisers. I think almost every fraud scandal that we've had has to do with valuations. Whether it be appraisers or title or the investors giving false values is what we're trying to protect everyone from. But to go over what a comp is, right? It's a comparable sale, a recently sold property, right? So not an on market, not sold 5 years ago. It's recently sold. And typically 12 months is safe, but it really depends how much volume and how many sales are happening in the market. So the most recent sale is going to hold more weight than a sale that happened 12 months ago. Same with distance, same with condition. I try to tell people when you're looking at how to run comps for a house, very similar to if you're going to buy a car, right? Like a used car. You go on Kelley Blue Book or wherever, right? And you want to buy a used truck, F-150. You're going to look at the model, the mileage, the condition, very similar to a house, right? You're going to look at the square footage, the location, the condition, the as is and ARV. So typically if you're doing a fix and flip or a new build, you're getting a two value appraisal, right? You're getting the as is value, and then you're also getting the after repair value. So the other thing they're looking at when you're pulling comps, you're looking at the difference between even just like a 1 and 2 story. You're looking at the year. So typically you have some places in the US that houses were built 100 years ago. And then you have places like Las Vegas where most of the homes were built in like the early 2000s, 2010. So you're not going to use like a 2005 built home and compare it to a home built in 1910, right? The other thing is the square footage. I think we went over this before, but the gross living area typically, and keep in mind too, these are all rule of thumbs. There's always exception to the rule, but you have above or below 25%, right? So 25% more, 25% less of the gross living area. You're not going to take 1,000 square foot home, and even though there's a comp that sold a mile away, but it's 4,000 square feet, it's not truly a comp, right? Just because it was sold in the same area, it has to be like kind, right? You wouldn't compare a Toyota Tacoma to a Ferrari. I mean, if you're in Hawaii, maybe you would, but outside of Hawaii, you're not going to give the same value to a Tacoma as you would a exotic car. Was the other thing. Bed bath count we went over. Oh, location. So rule of thumb, again, 2 miles is pretty safe, but it really depends too on where, what city, what market you're in. If you're in an urban area, if you're in downtown LA and all the houses are super compact, or you're in Atlanta versus you're in the suburbs of Denver, right? You can go a little bit further out. This is actually what happened to my Atlanta deal a couple weeks ago, right? She has the comp, recently sold comp that she built, and it was 0.9 miles away. And then you have another comp that's sold for less, that's 0.1 miles away. So even though it falls under the 2 miles or 1 mile, the house that was closer to the subject property is going to hold more weight than a house sold, even if it falls in the general vicinity of the subject property. With that being said, the appraisal is not the end all be all, right? The appraiser gives an opinion on what the market value is, and every lender is going to do an internal evaluation to make sure that the values are correct, that there's no overvalue or undervalue of a property. And so sometimes we'll see, like we have two examples, one where a property was overvalued and then one where it's undervalued. So this is one, oh, the New Orleans one. So this is a deal that we actually just killed. We have the as-is value is 525,000. At this number, it would have worked fine, right? At this number, the values hit. There's enough room in the deal for us to do a DSCR, for them to get some cash out. But like we said earlier, so comps are recently sold, not on market, but that doesn't mean that that's a true value. Keep in mind, this is a condo, right, Keely? This is a condo. So it's in a building, right? There's a bunch of homes. Usually, if you're in a condo or a multifamily or whatever, you'll have recently sold comps within that building. And that's going to give you a more accurate value of what it actually is. But one, New Orleans is a non-disclosure state, so you can't see like the listed or the sold prices. And then you also, for some reason, like this is a condo and we're wondering why there's no recently sold in that building. So the reason we end up killing it, there's units in the same building that have been for sale and been on market for over a year, right? So even though you have comps here that are different buildings, kind of the same, and you have a value of 525,000, you have units and model matches that are in the same building that have been on market and haven't sold in 2 years, right? So you can't really give a true 525 value when the unit right next door has been on market for 500 days and they just did a price drop to 475 and it's still not selling. And then you have other units in that same building that are listed for 300 that are not selling. So as an investor, right, the values are there, the appraisal are all just data points, right? But at the end of the day, your job is to get an ROI, it's to get a return on your investment. And if you are being optimistic about your values, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? You really want to be a realist and a kind of a skeptic when it comes to values, because that's gonna be a thing that either makes or breaks a deal. You'll never save a bad deal with good financing. I'll just put it that way. But you can definitely get a bad deal by having bad valuations. You know, like 100% financing is not going to save you from a bad deal because it's just going to kick the can down the road. And at the end of the day, it's still a bad deal. The values are not going to be there when you try to sell, when you try to refinance, whatever it is. You may be able to get the deal done today, but you're not going to, it's not really a deal. Whatever the value is, you're going to hold on to that property for a long time, or you're going to end up losing money on it. But vice versa, we have another property that we're closing on here pretty soon. So this is the exact opposite, right? Where an investor was being very conservative. We had this at an ARV of 1.2 million, and it came in at 4.6. So the reason they had it at 1.2 million is because you look at the same street and there's properties, pretty much everything is selling between 1.2 and 1.8 million on the same street. But this appraiser looked at the property. It's a new build for one. All the properties on the same street were fix and flips. And it was a bed bath short, right? So this one is a 5.5. Everything else was a 3.2 or 4.4. But this appraiser was able to go out and look at new builds within the 1 to 2 mile range that are the same bed bath count, and you have values that are way higher. And so even when underwriting looked at this deal, they agreed with the appraiser at the 4.6, even though the same street is 1.2 to 1.8. With that being said, as an investor, you never want to be, you kind of don't want to set the comp, right? You never want to be the first in a neighborhood. You don't want to be the white elephant. Good investors are always going to be early, but not first, right? And so what I mean by that is, as an investor, you're taking in data points on what the market is telling you, and you're being realistic, you're being kind of skeptical, right? But one of those data points is, where is the market moving, right? If you're on a street and nothing's selling for $1 million, and you're saying, oh, but my product's gonna be better, it's gonna be the best $1 million, let somebody else take that risk. Let another investor, right, who really believes in it. Because if they do a project and it sells for $1 million, then cool, we have the data that says this street sells for $1 million. It's just unnecessary risk, I feel, to try to set a comp when you can be second or third in the market, right? At the end of the day, being an investor is being conservative with your money and looking at the chessboard for what it is and making calculated decisions. You're being a professional investor, not real estate gambling, right? So we go based off data and what the market shows, and not just a gut feeling. You know, as an entrepreneur, gut feeling will take you a long way. I'll say that.
Mhm.
Like, you need to have a little bit of crazy, and you need to have a strong intuition, right? If you're gonna build something. But as an investor, you look at the trends, you look at the data that's available to you, and you make calculated decisions. That's going to be the biggest difference between someone who's investing and in the game for a long time, and the fly-by-night guys who are in during a hot market, do a couple flips, couple new builds, and then they get burned, and now they're selling courses. No shade to people selling courses, but
Nah,
it's a
totally.
trend that we see pretty often. You know, we talk to a lot of investors, and guys come to us or to lenders, and they tell about all these courses that they sell, but their track record doesn't qualify. Like, it's
Usually a
just what
red
it is,
flag.
you know? Yeah,
Yeah.
you're teaching all these people how to, and it's not even just in real estate. Like, you see it everywhere, right? In every
Not
industry.
everywhere. Every industry.
Like, there's money in teaching people versus actually doing. But
Yeah. How do you handle comps in non-disclosure states, right? It's hard.
the best way is a realtor with MLS access. MLS is going to be the best way to pull comps. You have Zillow, Redfin, Realtor.com, Connected Investors, which we'll bring up next, that are all good tools. But at the end of the day, like, the MLS is going to be number one. That's going to be the closest source of truth when it comes to recently sold properties. So if you're an agent or you're working with an agent, they're going to be able to pull it. Just make sure, like, you can double check your agent's work, right? Because sometimes agents will use, they're using on-market properties because they're trying to see where the market's going and how to list a house or whatever. But if you're an investor and you're looking at how an underwriter is going to look at the property, just follow these rules, and then you'll, or train your agent also how to pull comps as an investor, right? It's different than if you're listing a primary home or if you're looking to buy a house.
Yeah, because even the softwares don't pull, yeah, like PropStream and
Yeah.
so
Well, so like this New Orleans one, for example, right? You can't see the recently sold, but because we know it's a condo and we realize that there's no recently sold in this building, we can look at on market, which is where we found all these units that are listed that have been sitting for 2, 3 years. And then even though it's not giving you can't really give you a value, you know for sure it's not worth 475 if there's the exact unit's been sitting for 2 years, you know. So always good. I didn't even realize to do that really until this one. It's been a long time since we've had to do that. But yeah, you're so used to just looking at recently sold properties where you can look at on market too, just to make sure that, you know, units or houses in that area are selling.
Yeah. Bo's got a
Question.
question.
When you're looking at those places in New Orleans, you guys, and I'm sure that you probably have taken this into account, that where the levees set, Lake Pontchartrain and that, New Orleans is actually below the water levels.
Hmm.
And they're talking about with global warming and the oceans rising, a lot of that area is not going to be, it's going to be underwater, whether it be 10 years or however long. But I think that may be a reason why a lot of those places are not selling, those condos that you were talking about. It's something just to take into account for, because New Orleans is a very backwards place.
Yeah, we
to
were
look at
just talking about
investing.
that.
No, it's
Yeah,
great
we were just talking
insight,
about
Bo. You nailed
this
it.
deal.
Yeah, it's amazing how the water levels have changed so much and they continue to change, but it's also it's built down below the water level. So yeah, it's just I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a big thing that will kind of tell us if it's a market or if it's a building is the insurance, but also sales in the market. So our appraisal had comps for in the area. So there's condos selling within a mile of this place, just not in this building. So I think in this case, it's going to be building specific. Maybe there's a bad odor coming through that no one knows about unless you're there, or maybe the HOA is just insane. But it's a good data point to have if you're buying a property that all these units in this building have been sitting for 2 years with zero sales. Usually if it's no sales, then it's like, oh, people think that it's really hard to come by. No one wants to move out. But then when you look at the for sale and there's 10 plus units that have been sitting for, 2 years, that's another data point you need to take into consideration when you're investing in a property.
And the ones that are listed are doing massive price drops.
Yeah.
And then one more thing just to add, Bo, about the level of the water. So that might be they're taking that into consideration, and that might be why, like on this appraisal, it's pretty much considered a declining market,
Yeah.
right? So it's hard for a lender to want to be excited to be going into a market that is
Going
everything's
down.
going down. Like that for them, it's more risk, right? Like why would they want to? Not to say that they won't, but that's one of the aspects that they got to look at, and that might be one of the reasons too, is because of that water level, right? So, yeah, great insights on all of that.
Yeah. We had to unfortunately decline that deal, but fortunately we did. The borrower was a jerk, left us like a 1-star review.
Yeah, I
This
mean,
is why we have a strict no asshole policy, and no, we don't work with guys who can't take ownership because they end up pointing the finger at us. It's like, we're trying to protect you, dude. Like, if you get it, so I don't know. There's something, I think there's more to that. I think he's in a position and he's trying his best to get out, but we're not going to be the ones holding the bag. And we're here to protect our partners, and our investors. So
Just to go even one deeper, the person actually went to another lender and they wouldn't do it, right?
of
They
course,
didn't do it, so it came to us, right? And leading up to this appraisal, everything was good, but it's risk. It's all risk. Yeah, it's all risk.
I mean, even the appraisal came back good, right? Appraisal came back at 525, which would have worked, but you do a little bit deeper dive, and
yeah.
then you see that these, units are sitting.
Nothing
There's
sold in the last 2 years. So
yeah,
how can you even, and then the one that's listed did like a $50,000 price drop to 4 something.
and
It's
it's
a
still sitting.
same kind of unit. So it's
Yeah,
clearly not 500,000. Like,
yeah, 50,000 price drop, and it's been on market for 532 days.
532 days, same comparable. We can't use active listings as our value, right? But you can kind of use it as a gauge, right, of where it could be. Because like obviously if there's a unit that's exact same specs, you know, everything, and it's listed for 400, what is it? For what?
475.
475 sitting for 2 years, like clearly it's not gonna sell for 525. Like I would look into this appraiser, you know,
Yeah.
like what's the relationship between the appraiser and the borrower, you know?
Yeah. I will say on market will never help your values to a lender. It will only hurt you. You
Yeah.
know, so we can't use it as a comp to make your values better, but we'll definitely use it being conservative and being a skeptic, you know,
Yeah.
to say, okay, this has been sitting for 2 years. So
Yes.
obviously it's not worth 475 and we're trying to give it a value of 525.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta kind of put the whole puzzle together. And then when you do and you see it, sometimes it's like, oh wow, yeah, what was I thinking trying to do this deal? You know, or sometimes it's a surprise, like the one you just showed in Hawaii. It's you get
Yeah.
extra.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like you want your lender to tell you no if a value is not there,
Yeah.
right? You want because the last thing you want is to run into a loan to own kind of shop, right? Where they're just going to lend money to wherever and you end up foreclosing on the property and they just take it back,
Yeah.
which unfortunately is a strategy. It's not a huge, you know, there's not a huge market for that, but there's people out there who do that.
Yeah.
Um,
It's looked down upon, but like it
it
happens
happens.
all the time.
Yeah.
There's firms out there, that's all they do.
Yeah.
I think one more thing to add is a lot of people get upset, right, that it cannot close or something, something just comes up. But I think it's important to know that nothing happens unless the loan closes. We don't get paid all the resources that we use to make sure that you guys are set up as well, right? So we want this to close, but we want to make sure it's the right thing in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to also make sure that our investors are in the game for a long time. We don't want to do one deal that's
Yeah.
going to take them out forever. You know, like
Yeah.
to have a long relationship and repeat business is really what's going to make this whole thing sustainable. And doing one-off bad deals and then these guys are never in real estate again is it's not good for anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's why writing comps is so important and is the main topic of the call today. So, are we transitioning to Locke has a quick presentation about one of the softwares we use to pull comps.
Absolutely. This is Connected Investors, and it's a very powerful tool for investors, and we feel it can be a great resource to all of you. So this is a real estate investment software where you can find deals, many of which are below market value and off market properties. There are so many filters on the platform that can allow you to hone in on what you're looking for. There are seller motivations. It'll show pre-foreclosures, tax delinquencies, if the property is vacant, if the owners are out of state, if they're senior owners, tired landlords. All of those factors are filters that you can use in your property search. It also provides up-to-date contact information for the property owner or the selling agent if there is one, so that you don't have to go hunting around for it after the fact. It'll help you analyze your deals when it comes to evaluating opportunity or risk. It uses AI-driven analytics to help evaluate those. And this property data is up to date and covers the markets nationwide. And we truly believe that this is a powerful tool that will benefit you wherever you are in your investing journey. So we've actually partnered with them so that you can get a 2-week free trial and 2,500 free skip traces every month when you're reaching out to those property owners or selling agents. And so I'll put a link in the chat for you to check it out. And we really encourage you to explore the different opportunities and explore the platform and what you can get out of Connected Investors.
There's an affiliate link, but that's not what this is about. We don't make money off affiliates, trust me. So it's
And we
a
wouldn't be
tool.
sharing it if we didn't think that it was
Yeah.
truly beneficial.
And remember, it doesn't matter how much we know the market, how much we know the values. If you're trying to get financing for it, then it matters what the appraiser's gonna look at, right? And how they're gonna see it. So yeah, you may know, but you have to also run it through another filter. Is this gonna check with the appraiser? Or they might have an issue with this. At least you can get ahead of it and know you can rebuttal appraisals, right? So they're not perfect either, by all means, right?
Which we've done before. we've rebutted appraisals.
Oh
And
yeah,
then come to find
absolutely.
out, you talk to the appraiser, they're not from the area, they're having a bad day, they're trying to rush it,
Yeah.
and then you provide them these comps that are right down the road, and they're like, okay, yeah, they'll change their mind.
Yep.
It happens rarely. A lot of people don't like to be told that they're wrong at their job that you don't do, but it happens. If you know how to pull comps and you are kind of running it through the rules that we're going through earlier, just like the rule of thumb on how to pull comps, you can usually get that value. If the value makes sense, even for a skeptic, for an underwriter and appraiser to look at, then chances of you getting that value are going to be good. Just most of the time, you see investors with very optimistic eyes when it comes to values, right? They see, oh, this house sold for $1 million, even though it's a little bit further away, it's a little bit bigger. And you start running the numbers in your head of how much more you could make, when really you should be looking at be conservative, and then yeah, you can hope for the best, hope that your value is coming higher. But
Yep.
running numbers initially, you should be conservative.
So taking a top-down approach, because like once you dive into the little things of what the appraiser is going to look for, that's what really we should go into, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of get a range, say 3-2, like what's selling in the area and at what price.
Yeah, before we
Common
wrap up,
question.
there are a couple questions in the chat that we haven't answered yet. Elijah is asking, how is it getting permits on Hawaii Island? Does it take a while?
It not as long as
Fast.
Honolulu, I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fast. It's so super, super duper fast.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's ridiculously fast.
Yeah, I
Wow,
think
what did
I
they
think when our
do?
bar is doing that, I think it's like 4 weeks or 5 weeks that they got them, the new bills that we're doing. Quick. Oh, so I also
Hey,
heard that's why that I won't go too long, but there's a new mayor or new somebody got elected, and then he kind of tackled the permitting process. Right before we hop off, Sean's asking Redfin or Zillow. I usually have all three opened up. I have Connect Investors, Redfin, Zillow, and then I just run all three real quick, and then I'm gonna take the worst and best from all of them.
yep. If you're on Oahu, Oahu RE was good. I haven't used that in a while, but it's basically the MLS,
Yeah.
oahuRE.com. So
They need a MauiRE.com.
I know. We're just about at the top of the hour. Thank you guys for jumping on. Hopefully, this is value for you guys. If it's not, tell us what you guys want to talk about. Again, the first few is just we're going through a process to document for ourselves, for you guys, and anybody else who comes, across these. One thing I wanted to talk about was over the next few weeks, if you guys can. Our very own Layla got called on the big stage to speak in Atlantic City next month. And the panel that she's speaking on is going to be about investor sentiment. Like, how does, because they know that we work closely with investors and, we're doing this call. So, if you guys have anything, we want to hear it. And I think maybe the last call before we take off, which is in a couple weeks or so, we'll focus on that. Just like, what do you guys feel out there? How's the market? How's your portfolios? What's the vision? And we'll pass that up, or Layla will speak on behalf of us. So we'll have a voice.
Thank you guys. Thank everyone for
Thank you
joining
guys.
Thank you,
us.
Have a great
everyone.
week.
Happy Aloha Friday, everybody. Aloha.
Thank you.